excuse me, my mom, I woke up, she's dead on the staircase. Wow. That's the actual 911 call. 10-year-old Benty Shewan, August 6th, 1990.
Chillin' stuff.
Yeah.
Reporting her mother, Eva Shewan, dead in Telluride, Colorado.
And you can hear the dispatcher, right? Just totally confused, asking, she's sick? And Benty's just panicked, saying, she's dead on the staircase. There's flood. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not the kind of call you expect anywhere, but especially not Telluride back then. It was, this secluded mountain town. People didn't even lock their doors.
Exactly. So violent death. Baffling, it seemed. Unthinkable.
Completely.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling back the curtain on UHAL, a brand everyone knows, right? Like Coca-Cola or Kleenex. You see the orange trucks everywhere.
Everywhere.
But behind those trucks is this just extraordinary and often really heartbreaking story of the founding family, the Shewans.
Yeah, it's quite a saga.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack how this dream of a family dynasty, it just devolved into, well, bitter feuds, huge legal battles, and like we heard, profound personal tragedies.
Including murder.
And yet, somehow, the business itself, it survived. It actually thrived, and now it's even a favorite of some pretty sharp investors.
Which is maybe the most surprising part of all. So our mission today, digging into these sources, we've got articles, research, corporate filings. It's really to pull out the most important bits of knowledge.
Right. We want to understand this complex mix of intense family drama and corporate destiny at UHAL.
And figure out what lessons there are in that, for anyone building a business, sustaining one, or maybe even investing in one.
Okay, let's dig in. It all starts with Leonard Samuel Shewan. Slick Shewan, Navy vet.
Right. He starts UHAL in 1945, gets a $3,000 investment, which was, real money back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's building trailers himself on a ranch in Washington State.
Yeah.
But what was the big idea? The innovation.
Well, his real genius was the one-way rental concept. Before him, you rented a trailer, you had to bring it back to the same place.
Ah, okay. That's a hassle.
A huge hassle. Slick changed that, rent it here, drop it off there. Perfect for post-war America, everyone moving around. And he expanded incredibly fast, mostly using gas stations as dealerships.
Smart. Leverage existing networks.
Exactly. By 1955, so just 10 years in, U-Haul had 10,000 trailers. It was already a national brand.
Incredible growth. And this business growth was deeply tied into his personal life, too, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. His first wife, Anna Mary, doctors warned her about a heart condition, but she had 6 kids with him. Very devout Catholic.
6 kids. Wow.
Yeah. And tragically, she died young, only 34, in 1957. After that, LS, he remarried 4 more times, ended up with 12 children in total.
12 kids. Okay.
And here's the crucial part for the business. He decided, probably with good intentions, build a legacy, maybe get some tax breaks. He decided to involve all his kids in the company from birth.
How involved?
He transferred 94% of Americo stock, that's the parent company of U-Haul, to his 12 children. 94%. He kept only 2% for himself.
Wow. Okay, on the surface, that sounds incredibly generous. I mean, a founder giving away his company. But your research suggests that structure, giving away so much ownership, it actually planted the seeds for conflict.
It's a classic case, really, of unintended consequences. Ellis himself said it later, and this is a direct quote, "My ignorance has resulted in much evil."
Oof. Heavy.
Yeah, because giving away 94% to 12 kids created this super fragmented ownership and, basically a power vacuum. No clear plan for who takes over, just it's a family business. So as the kids grew up,
it started fighting for control.
Exactly. It became a recipe for, intense internal warfare.
So those seeds were sown early. What happened as the kids got older and LS kept remarrying?
Yeah.
Did things get worse?
Yeah. The tensions just ramped up significantly. Sources talk about ugly family politics, basically taking over the household.
You can imagine.
One former stepmother, Suzanne Gilbaugh Anderson, she called the expanded household total chaos. Said LS was away a lot, and she was struggling with his, let's say, willful children.
Willful, right.
Resentment was building between the siblings, especially towards one son, Sam. And you even had Joe and Mark, 2 other sons, holding secret meetings about family stuff, maybe even about their stepmother.
Wow. Sounds less like a business and more like a soap opera.
It had elements of that, for sure. Yeah. And it really boiled over in 1986. That's the year Joe and Mark Shewan pulled off this coup.
A coup against their own father.
Yep. They ousted L.S. Shewan, the founder, from the company he built.
How on earth did they manage that? He created the whole thing.
Well, Joe was pretty sharp strategically. He had a Harvard MBA and a law degree. He spent time building alliances, bringing people to his side.
Playing the long game.
Exactly. By 1988, he'd managed to, quote, woo 53% of those voting to his side. And that was it. LS's dream of this family-run going machine over Joe and Mark were in control.
And the fallout must have been immediate.
Oh, instant. The war within UHAL, as some called it, just intensified. Sam Schuen, the brother they resented, he left in 1987, said he was being harassed by Joe and Mark.
Okay, so one brother out. What about LS, the father they just kicked out?
He didn't go quietly. He launched this huge campaign to get Joe removed from power.
Right.
Which kicked off a legal battle that lasted, wait for it, 14 years.
14 years. Good grief. What kind of scale are we talking about with these lawsuits?
Just monumental. The big one was in 1988. LS and 6 of his kids sued Joe and his faction. The jury initially awarded them, get this, $1.47 billion.
Billion, with a B.
With a B. Now, that got reduced later on appeal to $461 million, plus interest, but still an absolutely massive sum.
That could have sunk the company.
Easily. It put immense strain on everything. In fact, 5 of Americo's directors actually had to file for personal bankruptcy in 1995 because of that judgment.
There's
the cost, right? Financial, personal, devastating.
And this bitterness, it wasn't just on paper and court filings, right? It actually got physical.
Yeah, it absolutely spilled over. Shareholder meetings apparently turned into, well, shouting matches, even physical confrontations. There was this infamous meeting in Reno in 1989.
What happened there?
Allegedly, Mark and Joe physically assaulted their brother Michael. There were accusations, tapes with profanities. Charges were eventually dropped, I think, but it just highlights the raw hatred, right there in the boardroom.
Unbelievable.
And Joe wasn't just fighting in court or allegedly in person. He was making moves to solidify control. In '88, he issued almost 8,100 shares of treasury stock to 5 key employees, the so-called Golden Five.
Why do that?
To change the math, as one source put it, dilute the voting power of his father's faction and lock in his control, which naturally led to another lawsuit.
It just never ends.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to that chilling 911 call, August 1990, just months before a big LA Times article really laid out this whole feud.
Right. The murder of Eva Schuen, Sam's wife, in Telluride. It became this tragic peak, the absolute darkest point in the whole saga.
So Sheriff Bill Masters arrives, finds Eva, 44 years old, dead at the top of the stairs, shot in the back, small caliber pistol, .25 caliber.
And the scene was weird, right? No forced entry, no burglary. The family dogs were shut away somewhere. The kids downstairs heard nothing.
Which led Masters to suspect, what a professional job in Telluride.
That was his initial thought, yeah. Or at least something very, very strange, not your typical crime scene. And given the family war raging, well, suspicions immediately flared up within the family.
I bet. And the immediate reaction from Eva's husband, Sam.
He was out of town, flew right back, immediately went into hiding with the kids, and offered a $250,000 reward for information.
But behind the scenes, the family was already pointing fingers.
Oh, yeah. Almost instantly. Ellis Schuen, the founder, he went public saying he believed Joe or Mark were indirectly responsible. He even suggested the real target might have been Sam.
Wow. Accusing his own sons.
He sent a formal letter to the Americo board, accusing them, the board led by his sons, of creating the environment that led to Eva's murder.
And Sam, Eva's husband?
Sam echoed his father. He said he believed he was the intended target and that Eva's death was a, quote, direct result of the environment created by the seizure of control of UHAL by my brother Joe.
So this horrific murder just became fuel for the fire, just pouring gasoline on this already raging family inferno.
Absolutely. And then it did even weirder. UHAL hired its own private investigator, John Sellers.
Okay.
And Sellers starts pushing this different theory, dismisses the professional hit idea, calls it quasi-professional maybe, and suggests it was a bungled hostage for ransom attempt. He even claimed Bente, the 10-year-old, told someone about men demanding money.
Did she? What did the sheriff say?
Sheriff Masters flatly denied it, called Sellers' story ludicrous, accused him of spreading disinformation. It just shows how messy the whole thing got.
Yeah, like the investigation itself became part of the battle.
Totally. Red herrings flying around, anonymous faxes sent to reporters trying to discredit LS, suggesting he needed treatment for manic depression.
It was ugly.
So did they ever find out who actually did it? Well, yes and no. A transient man was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted for Eva's murder.
Ah, so not directly related to the family feud then.
Legally, no. The conviction stood. But LS and Sam, they never bought it. They continued to publicly link Eva's death to the U-Haul battle. For them, even with the conviction, it was never truly solved. It remained tied to Joe and Mark's takeover.
Man, it makes you think, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
pressure, the sheer weight of all that conflict, billions of dollars, family ties, all tangled up. What did that do to LS Shoe in the end?
It clearly took a profound toll. After years of fighting, LS expressed just immense regret. He famously said, "I created a monster."
I created a monster. Wow.
And then in October 1999, he was 83 years old. He died in Las Vegas, drove his car into a utility pole at high speed. The police classified it as an apparent suicide.
What a tragic end. The guy starts this iconic American company with almost nothing, builds an empire.
Only to see it or feel like he saw it consume his family and ultimately himself. It's a really dark, cautionary tale about family businesses.
It really is. His life started with this incredible vision, ended just tragically. But here's the twist, right? Despite all that devastation, the lawsuits, the accusations, the murder, the suicide, U-Haul, the company, it didn't just survive, it thrived.
Which is kind of incredible when you lay it all out like that.
So how? How did this company, soaked in so much internal strife, become the dominant market leader we see today?
Well, it's a fascinating story of, I guess, corporate resilience. And a lot of it comes down to how the company is structured now. U-Haul Holding Company, as it's called today, they dropped the Amarco name.
Makes sense? More recognizable.
Right. It operates as a controlled company. That's a specific designation. It means that despite everything, one faction of the Schuen family, the one led by Joe Schuen,
The son who led the coup.
the very same. He's been chairman, CEO, president since 86, 87. His faction still controls about 55% of the company's stock, directly and indirectly.
So they have majority control.
Exactly. And that controlled company status under NYSE rules gives them exemptions from things like having a majority of independent directors on the board. Decision-making is centralized within that family faction.
Interesting. So Joe's son is on the board now.
Samuel J. Schuen, yes. But critically, no one from the LS or Sam Schuen side of the family. That historical opposition, they're out.
So the very concentration of power that maybe LS tried to avoid by spreading ownership, that concentration, ironically, allowed Joe to stabilize and turn things around.
It seems that way. Once Joe Schuen had undisputed control, he implemented a pretty clear strategy. It was all about revitalization.
What did he do specifically?
Between 1987 and 1996, he invested massively, something like $2.8 billion into buying 80,000 new trucks.
80,000.
Yeah, it slashed the average age of the fleet from 11 years down to just 5 years. Big difference for reliability and customer perception.
Huge difference.
And he went back to basics, sold off businesses that weren't core to moving and storage, just relentlessly focused on getting U-Haul back to being the undisputed leader in DIY moving and, importantly, self-storage.
And the numbers show it worked. You mentioned their mission, this flywheel idea.
Right. Provide a better and better product and service to more and more people at a lower and lower cost. It's that scale economies shared model, like you see with Costco or Amazon. Get bigger, pass savings and benefits to customers, which helps you get even bigger.
And their dominance now is just undeniable. Over 23,000 locations, 176,000 trucks.
Commanding 50% market share in DIY moving. That's like double their nearest competitor. Budget.
How do they maintain that? Is it just the brand?
The brand helps, but the real power is what analysts call physical network effects. Basically, the more locations U-Haul has, the more convenient it is for everyone.
Ah, the one-way rental thing again, but amplified.
Exactly. It creates this competitive moat that's almost impossible for anyone else to cross. You want to move from, say, Marfa, Texas, tiny town, to Houston. You'll find U-Hauls in Marfa and near your destination.
Try doing that with Budget or Penske from Marfa.
Good luck. You might be driving hours just to pick up the truck. So U-Haul offers maximum convenience, competitive prices because of their scale, and they just keep taking market share.
Okay, so the trucks are dominant, but you mentioned self-storage as being key to Joe's strategy too.
Yeah, that's become this sort of hidden growth engine. It's such a natural fit with the moving business, right? People move, they often need storage.
Makes sense.
And U-Haul has gone big into self-storage over the last decade or so. They now own around 78 million square feet of it.
78 million, how big is that?
It's huge, enough to fill over 1,300 football fields. It makes them one of the top 3 to 5 self-storage players in the entire country if they spun it off as a REIT, a real estate investment trust.
Like the big public storage company.
Exactly. U-Haul Storage would probably be the 3rd largest storage REIT in the U.S.
Wow. And you call it a hidden growth engine. Why hidden?
Because there's potentially a lot of hidden value there. Their average rental rates for storage are still estimated to be about 30% below the market rate of competitors like Public Storage or Extra Space.
So room to grow revenues just by raising prices.
Significant room. As they modernize their pricing, as the properties they've acquired mature, there's substantial upside potential there. And it's interesting, Joe Schuon actually wrote his Harvard MBA thesis on self-storage. He saw this opportunity way back.
Always helps to do your homework. Okay, trucks, storage. What else? Any growth areas?
The UHAL business, those portable moving and storage containers, that's another big push.
PODS.
Exactly like PODS. Now, UBox is still smaller than PODS, definitely trailing them in market share, but it's growing, and they have some real advantages.
Such as?
Generally cost. We saw one quote, LA to Houston, where UBox was around $1,500. PODS was closer to $4,000, though that included a month of storage. UBox also often includes things like furniture pads.
Okay, cost is a big one.
And availability. Because they can leverage UHAL's massive existing network of locations, they can often serve areas PODS can't. Plus, they offer more flexible delivery options. So, yeah, it's a significant opportunity for them.
So dominant in trucks, massive and growing in storage, pushing into containers. It starts to make sense why, despite that incredibly messy history, some really smart investors got interested.
Absolutely. That's the fascinating part for people interested in investing. You have these prominent, value-focused super investors looking past the drama and seeing the underlying business.
What do they see specifically?
They saw this incredibly durable business model, the irreplaceable network, the strong cash flows, all trading at what they considered a discount because maybe the market was still spooked by the family history or the complex structure.
Classic value investing. Finding gems hidden under rocks.
Pretty much. You had firms like Tweedy Browne who've held the stock for over a decade. They loved the capital-light franchise aspect, meaning UHAL doesn't own all those locations. Many are dealerships, plus the cash flow and the perceived undervaluation.
Any other big names?
Nelson Peltz's Trian Fund Management took a stake. They tend to push for governance changes, better capital allocation. They saw potential upside in managing the real estate and insurance assets more effectively.
Okay.
Yacktman Asset Management liked the toll booth nature of the business, providing an essential service people pay for, and the high market share. Abrams Capital called it an overlooked cash cow.
So multiple sharp minds seeing the same core strengths.
Right. And the company even made moves to address some investor concerns. In 2022, they did that stock split, creating non-voting shares, UALB.
Why do that?
To improve trading liquidity, make it easier for big funds to buy and sell without the Schuon family losing voting control. They still hold something like 90% of the voting power through the original Class A shares. And then changing the name from Amerco to UHAL Holding Company just made things clearer.
Connects the stock name directly to that brand everyone knows.
Exactly. And the financial results really back up the investment thesis.
What are the latest numbers looking like?
For the fiscal year ending March 2025, consolidated revenues were about $5.8 billion. The moving and storage segment itself brought in almost $5.5 billion of that, with earnings from operations around $645 million.
So solid numbers. Profitable, resilient.
Absolutely. It really demonstrates how strong the core business became under Joe Schuon's leadership, despite, or maybe even partly because of, the way control was consolidated after that brutal family war.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway here for you, the listener? We've gone through this incredible saga.
It's just such a dramatic story, isn't it? A family business, an American icon, just torn apart by these bitter feuds, massive lawsuits, even murder.
Yeah, truly Shakespearean in scope. Yet somehow, out of all that personal devastation, the brand, the business, it didn't just survive, it flourished. Driven first by LS's vision, and then by the disciplined, maybe ruthless leadership of the very sons who took control from him.
Which leaves us with this really provocative question, I think. What truly defines a company's legacy in the end? Is it the deeply personal, often destructive human drama of its founding family?
Which is the company's relentless ability to adapt, to innovate, to serve its customers, and ultimately to build this enduring, valuable enterprise that somehow transcends all that internal turmoil. Something to think about.